Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm excited to have Jessica Peterson here live with me. Um, she's an integration coach. She is an expert in menstrual cycle awareness. And so I'm really excited to dive into this topic with her because honestly, I know almost nothing about it. I have to admit, I'm one of those women who's like, can't be bothered by my menstrual cycle. Don't even like, yep, okay, move on. Just not. And I think that just comes with how I was, brought into, back in when I was 13 and got my first cycle. It was like, here you go. Here's your pad. Put that on. Just don't even talk about it. So welcome, Jessica. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if you guys, if you're on this live, let us know. If you're watching the replay, let us know. So let's just dive straight into it. So I'm really curious, Jessica, like this topic has been something that I feel like honestly in the last just small number of years, few number of years, that I feel like it's been a topic that has kind of like popped out into my awareness. Whereas before then, nothing, like nothing, just nobody's talking about it. Nobody's addressing it. But now, of course, now we have, there's starting to be this awareness around it. And so I'm curious to know, like, what's your own personal story? Like what's your story? What made you want to learn about this and bring this as something that you can share with your clients and supporting them?
Yeah, so it was kind of an unlikely stumbling upon this information. I had first learned about the concept of fertility awareness about 10 years ago when we were trying to conceive our first child and having some difficulty. And Tony Weschler wrote a book in the mid 90s called Taking Charge of Your Fertility. And that was kind of the go-to handbook for anything related to this topic. So I first stumbled onto the concept of fertility awareness, which is basically understanding that our body has biological telltale signs that we experience as we go through the menstrual cycle, indicating the hormonal shifts that we're experiencing so that we can identify when we're ovulating. This was all for trying to conceive a child. So I was all about trying to identify that window because it's actually a very small window that conception can actually happen, surprisingly enough. And so, but at that point, it was still in the realm of reproductive purposes for me. And after we successfully conceived and then easily conceived a second child, I just kind of set it aside. But then several years later, like 6 years later, a girlfriend sent me this book. It's called Wild Power: Discover the Magic of Your Menstrual Cycle and Awaken the Feminine Path to Power. And that's by Alexandra Pope and Sharni Hugo Wurlitzer. And they founded the Red School in the UK. And they've been a huge part of bringing all this information to light. They're definitely pioneers in this whole conversation. And in the beginning, they kind of share like a vision and a prayer of what it would be like in a world where the menstrual cycle was honored and revered, and the wisdom that it has to offer was listened to and understood. And as I read that prayer, I just had this unbelievable, like, tingling and warmth and opening and expansion in my womb space. And it was very clear in that non-verbal way that this was part of my path, that learning more about this and sharing it was important for my personal purpose here in the world. And it really opened up this concept that the menstrual cycle is about far more than reproduction, actually. It holds a container for our emotional experience. And they frame it in the context of the 4 seasons. And that's what creates the framework. So we have this conceptual understanding of what winter, spring, summer, and fall all hold energetically simply by being alive and moving through the seasons year after year. But then on a personal level, we can take that into our relationship with our womb space. And this really transformed some health issues that I had been experiencing, and holding them in the context of understanding where I was in my menstrual cycle allowed for some really significant changes to happen and for me to tap into more health and vitality and a lot more self-compassion.
Wow. I just have to share, like, the minute you brought up that book and you just started talking about it, just because I'm energetically sensitive, the tingles that you were talking about that you felt, I was feeling the same. So there's something about, I mean, I just have to speak to this because this is all energy. So you being someone that has embodied this, and when you speak it and share it, it's like it's activating. It's there's something more mystical that's happening. So as you're sharing, I just have to name it. I feel that. I feel that really strongly, that you're actually, you're what your words are doing is like activating something within me. I'm like, whoa, okay, this is powerful. Like, I totally get the sense of that this is can be really life changing, is my sense.
Yeah,
Something
absolutely.
really profound.
Mm. I am sharing those full body chills with you, and I completely agree. I completely agree. And I really, as I've dove in deeper into exploring this in my own body, I'm starting to extrapolate it beyond the female body and understanding that the cyclical blueprint that we hold biologically as women is actually part of the larger feminine principle that's arising in consciousness right now. And so it's, for me, it's really about coming back to cyclical living as
Mm,
a society.
mm, right. Instead of this continual, like everything in our world, like capitalism is like endless growth, endless
Yeah.
productivity, endless, like there isn't that period of rest. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
And I'm
right.
actually using that as a framework. I call it the action cycle. And the first step in the action cycle is rest. You
Mm,
rest until you feel inspired. And once you
yeah.
feel inspired, you can take initiative. And once you've done some things, then you review, release, reconsider what you've created, and you come back to that rest stage. And that's
Hmm.
exactly what's happening in the menstrual cycle. So I think as beings who have female bodies, regardless of how you identify, we're the keepers of that unfolding
Hmm.
simply because of our biology. It's
Right.
unwinding every single month. And when we align with that instead of fighting against it and
Hmm.
holding ourselves to unrealistic expectations perpetually through our ever changing cycle, we can really sink into alignment with what it is that we're trying to create. And
Right.
it's much more cyclical than linear.
Yeah. That's a big deal. I mean, it's kind of, yeah, it's like I can see where, we've been, well, collectively just so driven by the mind, right? So there's this return to the body and allowing the body's inherent wisdom to bring us back into balance. I'm curious about how, what have you noticed in your own life, or maybe in the life of the clients that you've worked with, that when they start to adopt this, um, or that they start to, what's the word, really implement this awareness and really like, I'm curious, is it like, are there certain practices, or is it simply like a map that you follow and you just consciously choose to, um, change your behaviors in terms of like, okay, if it's a period of rest, no, I'm not going to go out there and like try to do all these things. I'm really going to do more like maybe journaling or resting or spending time in nature. And then when it's time for being more active, like, okay, now it's the time for me to go and go put something out, birth something out into the world. Like, can you speak to that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I feel like it's a lot less of like a doing something and more
Hmm.
of a relaxing into what is. And there's something, it's like a flow that you click into when you're allowing yourself to simply follow what's naturally arising with each season. And I'd say that that happens further into your explorations. At the very get go, there is often a lot of um, navigating the ways that we're out of alignment with the season that we're in. And I think one of the main ones that most women struggle with is what I call an out of bounds inner critic. And the inner critic actually has a very valuable purpose, and they belong in inner autumn when we're reviewing what
Mm.
it is that's happened in the other three seasons. But oftentimes, and I mean, we're so culturally built to let the inner critic run amok all seasons of the cycle. But when, let's say, in inner spring is a really dangerous time to have the inner critic out of bounds, because that's like this tender new garden that you have, and all these little baby shoots of ideas and excitement are coming out.
Yeah.
And then the inner critic will just come and trample all of those. And then we never get to the full expression of those creative ideas in the inner summer, right? And so it's a holistic system. So when we are fully embodying the gifts of each season, we have it's this three-dimensional sense of wholeness and alignment with where we are, which is going to be naturally arising in our system simply because of the biological process unfolding. And when we have awareness of that, we can leverage the gifts of that time, but also be sensitive to the sensitivities of those times. Like, not all seasons are good for all things.
Hmm.
And then we can start to mitigate those things. So even understanding that the inner critic has a place in the cycle and that she's valuable, then we can say, it's not your time. You can speak in 10 days, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So the other thing I want to ask, because I was asking this before, like me, I'm a woman who is now on my way to being in menopause. So I'm not having that regular cycle. Is this something that would still be applicable to women going through perimenopause or who are already in menopause, or is it just for menstruating women?
No, I think it's applicable to everyone. And it's like when you're actively menstruating, your body holds the container. When that's become unreliable in perimenopause or has become obsolete in menopause, the moon is your container. And so the new moon, the first day of the new moon, would correlate with the first day of bleeding. So that's when you enter into the inner winter.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can follow the cycle with the moon calendar. And that's a beautiful way. Even when you're actively menstruating, we're still held in these concentric cycles that are happening, right? So like I'm in a particular location in my physical body right now, but we're in the height of summer outside, and then the moon's in its own thing. So it's like all of these cycles are interacting, and there's no hierarchy to them. So when the body's no longer holding a cycle, there are other ways that we can hold those cycles. And the moon is a wonderful way to continue holding those after the body has stopped.
Yay.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. um, yeah, wonderful. And that's powerful. I mean, of course, it just goes to show that um, we are connected to everything, right? We're not just limited to these physical bodies. Um, so yeah, so my next question that arises would be, um, so can I ask you, what does this look like then when you are working with someone? Let's say, okay, Jessica, I want to receive some mentoring from you around how to connect with my menstrual cycle. What is it that you offer?
Yeah, so right now I have it's a 4 session package that's 4 consecutive weeks, and we travel through the cycle together, beginning in whatever season your body or the moon
Hmm.
is in. So we're in live time addressing what's coming up in this particular season, and then traveling through an entire cycle together and just getting a lay of the land. And that's basically the foundation. And at that point, perhaps someone wants to just move off on their own and they can take it from there. But otherwise, we just continue journeying through those cycles together and continuing to work with what I call the messengers, which are the symptoms of being out of alignment with the particular season. And this is where it kind of dovetails with what I ultimately do as an integration coach. So we start working with those inner aspects that are having something to say at various parts of the season, and integrating them back into the wholeness of that cycle.
Right.
So, but it starts with a 4 session package where we travel weekly through each phase of the cycle. And of course, that's based on the sort of mythical 28-day cycle, which pretty much nobody has. But it's it's the closest thing with regular sessions that we can sort of align with the what's alive in each season.
Yeah. Wow. Beautiful. So, um, I'd like to ask, just upon closing, um, what is the vision that drives you to want to bring this work out? What is like, I understand, like, okay, working one on one, like, you're planting these seeds, but to me, it feels like there's some kind of larger, like, I mean, you kind of mentioned it at the beginning of the interview, this larger movement of reclaiming of the divine feminine. And I'm curious to know, in your own words, what do you think, like, what does that look like? If to wave a magic wand and all women were like empowered and lived by this wisdom, this information, like, what what would you see as a result for, like, the collective?
Mm,
I know it's a big question, but
yeah.
I feel like it points to that, right? Like, it's all part of this awakening.
Yeah, yeah. I think what immediately comes to mind for me, which is a little ambiguous, but it looks like there's a lot of slowing down that happens culturally,
Mhm.
and there's the recognition that uh, less is more, and there are limitations to the reality that we live in. But when we align with those, it's not a restriction, it's like a ladder. It becomes something that holds us. It doesn't hold us back. And so when
Mhm.
I see a world full of women that are living cyclically, there's an incredible amount of reverence that would become alive in the culture for the female body's process in general. And I think when there's more reverence for that, um, there's more equality.
Yeah.
Um, there's more exchange between genders, and it's like and then I just see like this fractal of like what that would look like spiraling out, how it would change literally everything, how we move in business, how we move through the seasons, how we raise our children, school even, you know?
Mhm.
everything would be different if we started to
Oops, hang on. Oh, I lost you there. Okay.
I'm back.
Everything would be different. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's almost hard to just to even think outside the confines of the world that we live in right now. It would be
Yeah,
an
it would be so
utterly different.
radically different, total different reality. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of like, there's this, I've always felt like, this idea of like a new earth consciousness, new earth, that it really begins from within, right? So it's very easy to point out all the things that are wrong in our society. We all know what they are. It's like, it's so obvious. And so it just feels to me that this work, it's like if we do this, it's enough. What I feel and hear is like it's enough to do it for yourself, and so when we do it for ourselves, when we choose to hire someone such as yourself to do this work and to embody it, to trust that that's like our drop in the bucket of change, right? And there's something powerful about, as each woman chooses to say, yes, I'm going to do this, it is this ripple effect, because we are all connected. We're all connected by this, crystalline energy field. It's like, we're each a jewel in this net. And so when one woman lights up and embodies this new, I don't want to call it new information, it's actually ancient. It's just that we've become disconnected from it, right?
yeah,
That there's this return. And yeah, I can see, yeah, absolutely, how it would change relationships. I mean, if it's our responsibility, it feels like our responsibility to know and to reclaim it for ourselves, so that our partners then understand. Like, once we embody that energy, it's like we show up differently in our relationships. And so it's like you said, the ripple effect. It's just like it starts here, and then it goes into our partnership, and then into our families, and then into our community, and into our businesses, and it just begins to ripple
yeah,
out. So,
yeah. Yeah, and it's very alive in my own marriage, and I talk to my sons about it, and they're getting steeped in something that is very fresh, very fresh.
yeah.
And it's amazing to have a very accessible framework to reference to my husband, saying like, I'm in this season, and that's why I feel this way, and I don't have to say much more than I'm in my inner spring. And he knows what
Mm,
that means, that I'm
right.
more tender and vulnerable and a little, permeable.
Yeah.
And that maybe I'm receiving what he's saying much more personally than I normally would. And so just to have that language in relationship is incredible, because he is like, oh, okay, and he
Yeah.
can take it back a bit and eh, come toward me in a different way.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I'm kind of getting blown away over here. Don't know
Mm.
anything, like I said, I don't know anything about this, and it definitely, yeah, it's powerful. And so for the viewers that are watching this, if this is lighting you up in the same way that it's really kind of impacting me as I'm listening, and you want to, reach out to Jessica, obviously, you can go to her website. Where else can they find you?
Yeah, and I'm on Instagram at Jessica Peter Coaching.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything you'd like to add before we close, Jessica?
No, I'm really grateful for this opportunity to be seen in this work with so much enthusiasm, because the, the day in and day out can be much more subtle. The
Yeah,
excitement is much more subtle. And so to have it reflected back to me today by you is really such a gift. gift and is enlivening for me continuing to offer this work. So
Oh,
thank you
yeah.
for that.
Don't stop. Don't stop what you're doing. This is so needed. It's so needed. And yeah, I just appreciate you so much. And I'm so glad to be connected with you. And just so the viewers know, like we live in the same little valley. And so I feel really particularly lucky. Um, but yeah, you can definitely reach out to Jessica and jump into her program and get the foundation for learning how to orient yourself to this way of living and engaging with your own body and energy in a way that's honoring of you as a female. So this is this is beautiful work. So thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you.
All right. Bye everyone. Until next time. All right.